All right, today I wanted to bring Heath on. He just killed a 100-mile race, the Rabid Raccoon 100 miler. I wanted to talk with him and see how it went, like what his strategy was, and just his overall impressive victory being in like 18 hours, I think 6 minutes. Um, is that correct? It was 18 hours and 6 minutes?
Yes, yeah, I think I came in right under 6 minutes. The official results haven't dropped yet, but somewhere around there.
Yeah, I was looking at your pictures and I think somebody said 18:06, so I was hoping to just go with that. Um, so overall, what was your race strategy going into the race?
So I didn't really have a great off season. I kind of burnt myself out last year uh, with all the races I did in the summer and going into the fall, and I kind of took the winter pretty easily. I was running like 10 miles every single day. I did that for like 5 months straight and just kept that base, but I didn't really do any hard training runs or anything. And I'm about like 10 or 15 pounds heavier than I normally race. So I went out and ran the course the week before with a couple buddies on Sunday. And after I ran it, I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to try to go for about 20 hours. I think that'd be kind of a good pace. And my strategy going into it was to go about 205, 210, 215, 220, 235, and just up it 5 minutes every time. And then there was like a 15-minute jump in the middle, and that would get me around the 20-hour mark. That was kind of my strategy going in. And when I got there, I went around 206 the first lap, used the restroom, and things just felt good. I walked a little bit more every single lap, but my times were still around that like 205 area. And when I saw that happening, I'm like, I'm just going to keep going with it until I burn out. So that's kind of what happened. And I just held on to it a lot longer than I thought. And I thought the elevation was really going to beat me up, and it didn't too much.
Yeah, as you were talking about elevation, it looked to be about what 1,800 to 2,000, yeah, and change per lap.
Yeah. I think my watch said like 15,000 total, and other people's around 15 or 16,000 total. So yeah, about 150, 160 per mile, which is a lot more than any 100 I've done before. I ran Burning River last year, and it's between like 6 and 8,000, and the other 100 I've ever done was like 1,000 feet. So
Well, that's definitely a huge change. Um, so how technical actually was the course?
uh, technical, not very. It wasn't like insanely rooty or anything like that. The first like 4.5 miles of the course was super runnable. There's a lot of muddy parts throughout the course, which were hard to run through or hard to keep your footing on, but only like the last quarter mile of the course was really technical whenever you're coming down. I think they called it Mount Doom, that you had to definitely watch your step or you were going to eat it.
Now that they had a water crossing, did that play a factor at all? Like, did that get tiring after like 8 laps, or how did you handle
So
that?
yeah, the only thing that bothered me with that was I think it was like lap 5, 6, and 7. My legs kind of tightened up whenever I got in because the water was pretty cold and it was warm out at that time. So my muscles, I could just definitely feel tighten up going through that. And after a couple of minutes, that kind of worn off. But other than that, I didn't really have any issues with it. I was wearing shorts, just like half tights, but I saw a bunch of people wearing pants, and I'm like, I wouldn't want to go through a water crossing in pants and have all that extra weight being held on to me. So I was happy with the choice of what I wore for sure.
Well, yeah, because even with pants, then your legs start to get a little bit cooler just from the breeze. Because I mean, we're looking at what was it, March 15th through 17th or whatever it was.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at the date. I can't even remember what day it is. But for being March, the end of March, I would say overall the race got lucky. I don't want to like say as a bad omen, but like for the weather wise, you really can't ask for much better during this time of year.
No, absolutely not. I think it started out at like 38. There's a little wind. I was just in a windbreaker and gloves. Felt great. I kept that on for the first 3.5 laps, I think, and I took it off, and it got up to be 60. And then by the time I finished, it was still like 51. I put on my jacket for the last lap, and then I was like, holy crap, I'm too hot. So I dropped it off at one of the aid stations. But yeah, the weather was perfect. I think it ended up starting to like downpour whenever we were on our way back to the Airbnb at some point. But I didn't have to deal with that at all. And I know the last two times they had this race, the weather was horrendous. So definitely lucked out on that.
Yeah, because I know last year, because I was gonna go and I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna go in like a snowstorm with like negative temperatures in the middle of the night. I was like, it's too early in the season. But like this year, I was like, man, I wish I would have. I'm sort of kicking my, not necessarily wanting to do the 100 because I'm not prepared for it, but just getting out there and doing like the trash panda double, I guess, would have been what
Yeah.
I wanted to do.
Yeah, I was surprised. There was a ton of people that did that double. That was very popular, which you love to see. Just I love to see any runners getting out there because there's a ton of people out there on the trails that don't look like the like stereotypical runner, just going out there and doing those things. And I love to see just anyone getting out there and getting that exercise and just enjoying nature. So
Now, what made you actually choose the 100 instead of like the trash panda like double or the 100K?
so I'm actually sponsored by Wolf Creek. Um, they're my sponsor, and that was kind of what they wanted me to do. They had asked me whenever they sponsored me about running the race specifically, and about running their other ultras that they host to in New River Gorge. So that's kind of in my contract to at least run two of the ultras in the year, and the 100 I think is kind of my best, especially. So I definitely wanted to get that in.
Now, getting back to the course a little bit, since it is like if people don't know, since I guess we really missed the ball on explaining, it's like 8 laps, roughly what, 13 miles, I think it was what it was, 12 and a half.
Yeah, it's like 12.55, I think, is what they had officially.
Now, are you one of those people? Because I know I am. Like when there's a multi-lap race, I find it benefits me the second lap, the third lap, the fourth lap, and so forth, because you start to know the course, what to do, and you could sort of, it goes back to that strategy per se, but you know what to do and what to expect going forward after that first initial lap.
Yeah, I know a lot of people aren't a fan of lap races, but I definitely am. It's very easy for me to mentally chunk the race up, and that's what I think I really executed well. I was like, hey, these first 4.5 miles, I'm gonna pound it out, and then I have 3 miles before I get back to the aid station, which is a little bit of up and down, but not terrible. And then after that aid station, I had 4 miles to the finish, and it was about two uphill and two downhill. So I was able to just mentally do that every single lap. Hey, I need to get it in here, and then I can recover on some of these uphills. Just keep going at it that way.
Yeah,
And
I'm
it was for aid as well, because they had the mile two aid station was also you hit on the way back, which was 8.6. So I just had my family stay there to crew me. So if they're not having to drive around all day into all those different aid stations, it makes it very convenient for them, and it makes it very likely that they're never going to miss me on any of those laps. So
yeah, I'm not a big fan of lap races, but like I'll do maybe like a four. Eight's kind of on my verge, but like I to me, once I know the course, even if it's like a race, we'll even say if it's a 5K, if I know the course like from a previous year, like I know how to, it's such an advantage to me knowing how to attack it. And I think leading into like you were saying your times, you were like 206 or whatever, 205 like per lap. I think that might have played just, shooting a gun here, like might have played into that a little bit.
yeah, and you know how much you're slowing down actually. If you're just comparing completely different segments to each other, yeah, I went 13 miles, but if that segment's completely different and has 2,000 more feet of elevation, like did I slow down or my effort changing? So being able to really calculate that and knowing, hey, was your lap actually faster or slower, and by how much, I definitely think is very helpful.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to think about that, like if they're strategizing for a longer race or a lap race, it's one of those things I think runners should put in the back of their head that will help them down the road.
Absolutely.
So, being a lap race and being a longer race, when did you pick up a pacer? Because I think you were allowed after five. And who did you have as pacers?
Yeah. So yeah, 62.5. So 5 laps in, you're allowed to have a pacer. First off, I had my buddy Dustin Wogas. He paced me for that lap, and then I had my buddy Andy Boyd pace me, and then my last lap, my brother paced me. So it was awesome having all those guys that are very close friends of mine out there with me, and any of them could have ran the whole 3 laps with me. But mentally, it was nice for me to break it up, knowing that I was going to be running with somebody different. It was something new for each of those last 3 laps, and as well, a lot of times in this one I did a lot better, but when I'm 60 miles in, I don't want to talk much. I'm just giving one word responses, and it's kind of mentally tiring for whoever's running with you because they're not running at their full pace or anything like that. They're there for you, and they probably get a bit tired of just hearing one or two word responses. But this race actually felt pretty good, and we were having full blown conversations, which was nice.
Getting to the split times, it seems as though some people had like 20 splits, then like you had like 4 or 5 per lap. Was that because of like the aid stations? I was kind of confused about that. Like if you took aid, did you have to cross a map or something?
You ran through a building, so it started at like the hockey rink thing. You run through. There was a mat there. Then you run through this building that's a mile in, which is also an aid station, which I clearly went over the mat every single time. And then the other ones you ran through a building both times as well. So I have no idea. It seemed like the live tracking was completely messed up for everyone the whole time, which I was always asking once I was like 50 miles in, like, hey, how far am I ahead? And it was kind of impossible to know unless they actually stayed and like timed how far I was ahead by the time the next person came through. But I'm not sure what was up with that. It seems like they're still having that issue because I don't think the results are up for the 100 yet.
Yeah, that and I think the team relays are the two that aren't up yet. I think the 100K is, and maybe the halves, the different halves that they had. Because it was just weird because I'm watching live track and I'm like, all right, he's done with one, and it says you were done, and then there's like other people. It says, all right, split, 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 and I'm just like, oh, what the hell?
Yeah, I have no idea. I didn't dig too much into it. I saw that yeah, everyone has completely different splits on there, and there's a ton missing. But I definitely didn't miss the mat. I don't know if a bunch of people's chips were messed up, or if maybe the generators ran out on those things, or what really went on with that. But
Well, you might have just been going too fast.
it's possible. I don't know.
Did you ever stop and actually take a break at all during the race?
Uh, I used the bathroom for like 2 minutes on the first lap. Other than that, I ate a bag of Lay's chips and drank some Mountain Dew Kickstart. That was probably my only other time that I stopped for more than 30 seconds. Um, I try not to spend too much time at aid stations at all because it's really hard to catch somebody who's moving. If someone stopped at an aid station for 5 minutes, it's you make up 5 minutes on them if you're behind them. But if someone walks for 5 minutes, they still went a quarter mile ahead, so you still lose that. So that's kind of always been my strategy is to not spend much time at aid stations.
Yeah, because I was looking at your Strava splits, and I think the highest you had per mile, like 1 mile, was maybe 14 minutes at the most, but you were still doing like single digits for most of the race, which is, again, obviously indicative of your time being so low, but that's just amazing just being a trail race in and of itself.
Yeah, I had one in the high 14s. I don't think I ever went over 15 minutes, which I was happy with. I don't know. I like round numbers and stuff and staying under that. But I definitely hiked a lot. But yeah, I definitely kept it moving.
So then obviously, I guess this sort of like takes away from the next question. Did you change your shoes or gear at all during the race?
No, I try not to play with my feet at all or my shoes because as soon as you do that once, like you want to do it again. So I always try to stay away from that. And kind of like I said before, just the keep moving part of it. If I change my shoes, they're going to literally get muddy and a mess again. My feet definitely paid for it, but I'm pretty sure if I changed my shoes, my feet would have paid for it anyways. You're out in the mud for 18 plus hours, like you're gonna have some blisters, you're gonna have uh, some ugly stuff on your feet. So
Now, would you do that if it was, say, like in eastern states where you're probably going to be out there for 24 plus, or are you going to take the same strategy going into something like that, or like a javelina?
yeah, same strategy. Realistically, I think that gives me an advantage if everyone else is changing their shoes and taking 5, 10 minutes to do that, and I'm not going to do that. If it comes down to I lose by 5 minutes because I changed my shoes, I'm never going to forgive myself. So unless something happens that I think it's absolutely necessary, I took extra pairs of shoes, but I just didn't see anything necessary. I could feel the blisters forming and stuff, but I'm like, they're going to form. We're just going to go with it. And I ran another whenever I ran Burning River last year was super muddy, and I just didn't change my shoes there too, and it worked out what I thought was well. So I just figured I'd keep that strategy.
So you're getting pretty dialed into the 100-mile race or the longer races in general, where hey, I really don't need to do this or I shouldn't do this because you want to stay ahead. You're sort of like banking as much time and hoping somebody like me needs a rest or has to change gear or switch something up.
Yeah, I'm a very competitive person. I like strategy behind things as well. I'm a big sports fan and things like that. So anything that I can do to give myself an advantage versus other people. And that's the thing about running. It is so mental as well. That was one of the reasons I decided to just keep pounding as hard as I could until the wheels fell off, because I know there's someone behind me and they're probably getting the splits and how far I'm ahead of them. And I don't want them to have a good lap and think they gained ground on me if I can. I want to, like, yeah, I see you have the Goggins thing back, like take their soul. Like, I don't want them to think that they're still in the fight, especially whenever there's an Olympian 216 marathon runner behind me. I don't want him to think like, oh, I can make up this ground and catch him. Like, he was in the back of my mind the whole time. Like, this dude can just drop some insane paces at any time. So I don't want to give him hope that he's able to do that.
Yeah, because I know like Sally, when she talks about her races and stuff, she's always like, all right, so if I'm gonna pass somebody and then she like buries them. So she tries to like get ahead of them and then she just like lays the hammer down for like a mile or two and just tries to like kill their soul or momentum so that she wants to play that mental game with them. And I agree, that does help a little bit.
Yeah. And just like going through aid stations and stuff too. I didn't really feel completely miserable at all during the race. I held it together pretty well. But whenever you're going through those aid stations too, that you know people are going to be there. That was my one thing whenever I ran Burning River. I was coming through this aid station where I knew Arlen was going to pick up the guy who was behind me. And I felt absolutely miserable. It was like 60 some miles in. But I put on a game face and acted like I was completely fine. I did what I needed to do, but I'm like, I'm not going to have him tell the guy he's pacing, like, hey, the dude in front of you looks really terrible. We just need to pick it up and like give them any momentum going forward. So,
Yeah, because if people don't know, there is a lot of that going on at races. Like it's one of those like picture camera type things. Everybody puts on a good face when they see the cameraman, and it's the same thing with aid stations at longer races. So when you're in that competitive state, people really do play a little bit of a game. And there's people like at night races turn off their lights so people can't see them coming from behind and stuff like that. It's there's a lot of games in that competitive strategy going on.
yeah, which is awesome because it adds some like fun to the sport and some like more things that the average person really wouldn't think about until they actually look into it or hear about it, because everyone else just thinks you're just going out there and running. So,
Now, do you feel this was like an A race for you? Like, not necessarily your A race for the year, but like your performance. Like, did you ride that runner's high all day or did you have any lows?
yeah, I'm extremely happy with my performance, especially after I said that I didn't really do anything insane in the winter and being way over the weight that I wanted to be. I was looking at some of the pictures and I'm like, geez, Heath, like you gotta drop some pounds and put down the fork going forward. So I'm very hyped at what I can do going forward. It was definitely a race that I wanted to go into and be competitive. There was a lot of people there supporting me. It was, like I said, my sponsor's race. I don't want to go out and completely uh, crap the bed. And I did have some low moments though. I think that happens in every race. Pretty much everyone has some low moments. Miles like 12 through 25 ish. I was just thinking I had a lot going on in my just personal life going into this race, and I only slept for 3 hours the night before. And I just had all these things running through my mind that second lap. And I went to the aid station. It was at 21, and told my mom and my brother, I'm like, hey, like think about this stuff. Like I'm feeling good physically, but mentally I'm just not there. And my mom's like, we'll just stop thinking about those things. And I'm like, well, that's either easier said than done, mom. But my brother handed me an iPod that was like charged, and I threw on the music. And it was an iPod I hadn't updated since like 2016. So I was listening to some old Eric Thomas, Greg Plitt, um, who else? Tony Robbins, and a bunch of like old music. But I listened to that until I picked up Dustin at 67, and that just helped me mentally so much. A lot of races I don't listen to music or anything, but that came in absolutely clutch for me, and I'm definitely going to be doing it going forward for any long trail races.
So that's basically how you stayed mentally focused. You basically turned a little bit of a switch by taking your mind off of things by listening to music and listening to those motivational speakers then.
Yeah, it definitely helped. And the iPod was messed up. Like I said, it was an old iPod, and I couldn't like skip any songs or anything on it, so I just had to listen to whatever was on there. There's some weird stuff on there, but that definitely helped me. And just as I had like good lap after good lap, I was like, okay, I was 2 laps in, and I'm like, okay, I just need to run a really good third lap, and that will put me in a position that I can slow down some. And then I got there, I'm like, okay, I just need to get a really good lap in here, and that's going to give me a good 50-mile time. That means I was planning on running like an 8:30 for the first 50, based on my upgraded how I was doing. I'm like, that gives me, if I want to finish under 20 hours, what, 11 and a half hours on the back half. Even if I blow up, I can still do 11 and a half hours. And I had to tell my mom and brother to call Dustin in early because he wasn't planning on getting there till 3. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to be in there around like 3, so he better get his butt here. Like, I wasn't too far away, and he was able to adjust. But then once I got to mile 50, I'm like, hey, I'm going to run a really good lap here just because then I get my pacers and I can slow down with my pacers and they're going to keep me going. And then once I picked up Dustin, I'm like, hey, I want to go 2:30 on this lap. And he's like, oh, yeah, we can do that. And I was just able to really keep moving the whole time. And once I picked up Andy, I'm like, hey, if I go sub 2:45 here, then I can run a 3:15 with Seth. I'm like, I think anything under sub 19 is going to win it, based on how much of a lead I had then. And I ran under 2:45 with Andy, and then I got to Seth, and I'm like, hey, everything's down here. Like, I don't need to save my legs for anything. This is the last lap. I'm going to pound the downhills. My bottom of my shins were hurting so bad. I'm really hoping I don't have stress fractures. I'm not sure what it is. They're lightened up a little bit these past 2 days. But I'm like, I'm just going to go in the pain cave and just go through it. And I think we ran somewhere in the 2:20s the last lap. So I was very happy with that to be able to keep moving.
Now, would you have done anything differently?
So realistically, the only thing I would have done differently is drank some more caffeine throughout the race. I don't think I drank caffeine until 75 miles in. So just drinking, I'm a big fan of the Orange Mountain Dew Kickstarts, just drinking some of those at some of the aid stations earlier. My nutrition was on point. I just had a very basic thing. I was going to do the same thing every single lap, and it really worked out for me. At each aid station, I was switching out my bottles. I had two 24-ounce bottles. One was 3 scoops of Tailwind. The other one was water. Drank that every single time. And then I ate a honey stinger waffle and 2, they're called a glucose gels, are like very thin gels. And other than the first lap, my stomach was completely fine the whole time. I also ate 1 bag of chips and then some of that Mountain Dew Kickstart, but that's what I had. My stomach just stayed fine, and I didn't feel like I bonked really anywhere.
I was actually when we're on nutrition here, I was reading a study like 2, 3 weeks ago. This guy did some research on aid stations, and I don't know or not aid stations, but like a control group and a whatever, a non-controlled group. He was saying that people eat like, like the M&Ms and M's and the sugary stuff have like a 25% uh crash factor added on, like not finishing a race compared to like people that actually eat like the normal food, like the like whole potatoes, like the pierogies and stuff like that. So that might be something. I forget what the study was, but it might be something interesting for you to read down the road as well. If you're gonna
Yeah,
like,
and it's amazing how everyone completely differs on that. Because I can't take in solid foods. Like, I can't have anything heavy on my stomach. If I have anything heavy 4 hours before I run, I feel like I'm going to absolutely puke. But then, like, my buddy Dustin can just eat whole potatoes and feel absolutely fine in the race. So I keep it really, really light, and that's what seems to work for me. I try to stay away from like any dairy or anything like that because that upsets my stomach. Um, but I think one thing that a lot of people struggle with going into these ultras is nutrition that works for them. And I did a couple races last year where I ran the race just so I could try out nutrition and see what worked. And I had things work for one race. And then when I went into Burning River, I tried to do the same thing that I did for the Eagle Up 100 2 months before that. And my stomach wasn't having it. I had eaten Cliff Bars every 10 miles at that race. And then my second Cliff Bar into Burning River, I'm like, I'm going to vomit if I eat this. So I just had to go straight liquid the rest of that race. So it's interesting. I think temperature definitely has a lot to do with it as well. And just the stress on your body, how fast you're actually moving. So
yeah, I do tell people that as well. Seasons, as seasons change, and like you said, temperatures, like you got to almost have the years of experience almost to be able to know what nutrition that you need and what changes. Like what I might need in December is not going to be the same thing I need in June, and what my body wants, I guess, per se, because we'll just say it's 90 degrees in June or July. It's not going to want necessarily like whole foods. It's going to want something light because I'm burning up so much.
Yeah, as well as like how much liquid you take in is going to completely differ. I think I figured out about 6-ish gallons of liquid during the race, but whenever I ran Eagle Up last June, it was high 80s that whole race. I had to drink, I think it was like 10 to 12 gallons of liquid. So just that much temperature change, 30, 40 degrees, is going to double the amount of liquid that you need to take in. So
So how crucial do you think your crew was getting you to the finish line, and like what all did you have them do? Not just like the Pacers, but your like you're saying your parents and stuff at that aid station.
yeah, I would never want to run a race uncrewed. I think it is so helpful having a crew, and my family is absolutely amazing. It's just my mom and my brother. They're at pretty much any race that I do, and having it so I only have to stop for 30 seconds rather than fill my own bottles or go to a drop bag is insanely helpful. And same with like Dustin and Andy. Whenever they were there as well, they were helping roll me out or anything that I needed as well. They were keeping track of how far I was ahead since the timing mats weren't working and stuff. It's an individual sport, but it's really a team sport. Like I couldn't do the things without them. Whenever I ran Eagle Up last year, I ended up setting the course record by 3 minutes. And the only reason I said that was because my mom was filling my bottles every lap and just handing me my filled bottles. Because that would have taken me 15 minutes over a 100-mile race to be able to do that. So I thank them absolutely so much for dedicating all that time to supporting me.
Yeah, even just switching them out because I know my dad, and my buddy John were helping me at Lower Highlands last year. Like just I'm like I had like four sets of bottles and I kept two on me and I gave them two to like refill. And it makes such a huge difference between a 30-second aid station and like a 3 minute, because if you get to an aid station, there could be five, six people, maybe 10 people there where you're in a line and you don't want to be that guy that says, "Hey, I'm in the lead, let me through" type deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to be at a drop bag putting in 3 scoops of tailwind every single time I stop at an aid station too, or just having to go with whatever they have at that aid station. So I think it's absolutely immensely helpful. Probably saved me 20 plus minutes just having them crew.
Now, with this being a lap race and different races going on within the 100-mile race, because like the halves and stuff started at different times, was it nice to have other people on the course and like just being able to like, I guess, use them to track them down?
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. I know some people are like, oh, there's other people on the trail, I have to go around and stuff. Everyone's super nice. It's good seeing people out there. Everyone's encouraging each other. I didn't have any problems with anyone being rude whenever I was coming by. I was very polite to them, and just it kind of brightens it up seeing other people out there, for me at least.
Yeah, because in an ultra where it's like point to point or just like a big loop, it does get boring and mentally taxing just being by yourself for hours upon hours. So seeing people, it is just such a big mental boost. Not that you want to necessarily pass people, but just having somebody out there where you're not by yourself for 15 hours.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and yeah, I think it is like a mental boost too, just seeing other people just out there really going at it and just killing it as well. I just think that really helps me out.
Yeah, even that, hey, keep it up, you're looking good type, even if you're the one doing it or they're the one giving it to you, it's just such a mental win for both people.
Yeah, it was funny. The one guy was like, we were going through this like muddy section. He's like, geez, he's like, I can't imagine what this is going to be like for the eighth lap of the people in the 100. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is my third lap, and it's already getting muddy. He's like, oh, you're running the 100. I'm like, yeah, I'm running the 100. He's like, oh, geez, great job. So,
So at what point of the race did you realize you could win or the possibility was there?
I mean, going into the race, I had an understanding that there was a good chance that I would be very competitive and possibly win. I really didn't know anyone that was running the race other than Ben, which obviously he's an absolute amazing, talented person. But I had the advantage of I've run 100 milers before, and he's a person who ran on the track or ran on the roads a lot more. So with it being muddy, I thought that gave me a bit of an advantage. I'm not saying I thought it was a toss up whether I was going to place top three or not. But we were jockeying for position, not Ben, just a couple other people. One guy named Josh, he's a local guy to you, I believe. And there was one other person, I'm pretty sure he's won Eastern States before. I was just talking to Josh for some of the times and he said that. I forget what his name is, but I was in first to fourth place up until the finish of the second lap. And at that point, I was in second and the guy stopped off to get aid at the aid station. That's when I kind of took the lead from there. But then around after lap 4, I was at like mile 52 at the aid station. I asked my brother, I'm like, hey, like how much of a lead do I have? Because I knew I just ran a killer 50 miles. And he's like, it's about a 5-minute lead. And I'm like, I only have a 5-minute lead. And I literally just killed myself these first like 4 laps. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I got to hammer out this next lap at least just to keep ahead because I don't want to get past at this point because I know that would mentally probably be hard for me to get past if I thought I was doing so well. So going into the second to last lap, I knew I had about a 45-minute lead. I was feeling pretty good then. I'm like, just got to stick with it. And then with the timing mat's not working, my buddy Andy, when I dropped him off going into the last lap, he stayed at the hockey rink place where the start finish was to see when Ben came through. And he texted Seth and told him like I had a 53-minute lead. So at that point, I was already about 5 miles into that lap. I knew I just had to hold it together. And as long as I didn't stop, I was probably going to win.
Nice. Yeah, because I mean, not necessarily you don't want to not drop the hammer the whole time, but if you could like relieve some anxiety, I guess is the best way to put it. It does help a little bit. It lets you run, I think, a little bit faster and save some energy.
Yeah, you know where you can be aggressive and where you can kind of relax some. I told my brother, he's like, do you want to know how much of lead you had? I said, yeah, absolutely, because I'm going to drop the hammer more in some place and I'm going to be a bit more conservative depending on where we're at. So
Yeah, you don't want to take unnecessary risks on a trail race where it's really technical if you don't have to.
yeah, also I don't run in the dark much. I've probably ran for a total of 5 or 6 hours in the dark my whole life on trails. So that last lap in the dark, luckily it was only one lap, was different. And my brother's ran one trail race in his life and never runs trails. And we're both out there with headlamps, just like silly gooses, not really knowing what we're doing too well. So we were kicking a bunch of roots and stuff, but it was a great time. I wouldn't have it be any other way with him.
So would you prefer road, trail, or rail trail? Because you seem to do all kinds, but what's your preference?
Uh, that's a good question. I like a mixture. I mean, I don't really think I prefer one. They're definitely different beasts. One thing I need to do is actually run more on trails in training because I really don't run trails too much. I don't live extremely close to any trails. It's probably like a 25-minute drive. And just if it's dark out in the winter, I don't want to go run in the dark. And I'm just coming up with excuses now. I just haven't myself to doing that, which is 100% on me, which kind of is what excites me going forward is, hey, if I actually put in the work and actually do these things, there's a lot more potential that could come from it.
Well, you're still young enough. I want to say you're young enough because you probably got like I think you're what 25, 26?
Yeah, I'm 26 for a couple more
Yeah, so
weeks.
you're not even like nearly peaked and like the way that you're handling 100 milers now, you still have such a high ceiling. It's going to be interesting to see what you do and what you tackle the next, we'll say 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, that's why I love there's so many things I can correct. I've had some really good races. I'm pretty good at pushing through pain and really giving maximum effort. But just getting my training down, I've put in a ton of miles and stuff, but being more specific with my training. One thing I got to do is pound some downhills because that's what killed me on this race was just the decline. It wasn't even just all the incline that I'm not used to. It's just on the ankles was rough. So practicing those things and just learning more as I go, I'm just super excited for that.
I'm not a fan of downhills. I'd rather to me, one of my strengths is uphills because downhills, it's always about that risk reward factor for me in trail races because it's like, all right, do I want to like bomb the downhill on a technical stretch where I could trip, fall, and then there's my race, or do I want to do it on the flat in the incline? So I usually do the other two and let that one go.
No, I feel that. Yeah, it's definitely there's some people that absolutely bomb down hills and trail races, and I'm like, I'm not even going to attempt that. We're gonna attempt that because yeah, I'm not trying to crash my skull. I don't trust myself. I don't think I'm doppy really, but I just don't think I'm that coordinated.
We also have to go to work.
Yeah, yeah. I had to go to work on Monday. I wasn't able to take PTO this week because just the way my work schedule worked out, like I normally do after 100. So it's like, oh shoot, yeah, I don't want to end up breaking something.
How was that work day?
So I text my boss. What I couldn't be off for actually didn't happen. I work at Walmart and I am an academy coach, so we teach classes and stuff. And we were supposed to have a class this week, was why I couldn't. I was supposed to be the one facilitating it, but we ended up not having it. So I probably could ask him to have the week off once we figured out we weren't going to have it. But I texted him Sunday night because I was late whenever I got my run in. I'm like, hey, can I take a half day at PTO? And he's like, "Oh yeah, of course." So luckily, I took a half day and got to sleep in a little bit, which was nice. But walking hurts right now. But I try to just put on a fake face because I don't want to be that person who's like, "Oh, what's wrong with you? Oh, are you okay?" Like most people know what I do, not because I go out and tell them, but a couple of my coworkers are really big fans of mine and stuff, and they were like telling me like, "Oh, yeah, Heath won this 100 this weekend." I'm not going to go around telling everyone that I did that because I'm just not that kind of person that looks for that attention. But it's cool when other people do it for you.
Nice. Is there any advice you would give someone wanting to participate in this race next year or any other 100-mile race for that matter?
Yeah, I would just say be consistent with miles and build up slowly. You don't want to get hurt jumping miles so much. A lot of people have done that in career. I've done that many years back. But just slowly build up your miles. And I think your weekly mileage is what's most important. I think if you build a really good base, you don't need to go out and do 50-mile long runs or 60-mile long runs to be able to push through a 100-mile race. I think just getting your body used to that mileage over time is going to be what's most important. And figure out your nutrition because that kills so many people with races.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, it's such a teeter-totter type thing. It's always hit or miss because even the days leading up, you just don't know how your body is going to react to that environment that day.
No, I definitely agree. And I think getting calories in early is very important in just coming up with a plan of what you're going to do when and not just winging it.
So you had another 100-mile victory at the Eagle Up Ultra, which actually gave you a top 20 100-mile time in 2023. So how did these two races compare? And are you more proud of one than the other, or they just hold such special place in your heart?
Yeah, that was my first 100 I ever completed. And I set the course record, which Arlen Glick had it beforehand. And he's an absolutely awesome runner. He's sponsored by Kraft and he's very elite. When he ran it, it was one of his first 100. So it wasn't like he ran it at his level he's at now. He'd absolutely shatter that record now. But that race was very special to me, being my first 100. And I was going for the record going in. I knew I could kind of be around there if everything went well. But it was one of the first hot days of summer last year. And like I said, it was in the high 80s for the majority of it. So dealing with that, I ran a really good first half right around where I wanted to be. And then mile like 70 to 85 were super rough. And I actually fell off course record pace. And my one buddy jumped in, Carlo. He's like, that race, you were allowed to have as many pacers as you wanted, and you could have pacers from mile 20 on. So I had pacers literally the whole day with me. But he's like, hey, you're going to set this course record. You're going to do this. And I'm like, dude, I'm running 11-minute miles right now, and I need to run set the record. Like, yeah, right. And he's like, just run with me. So he's like, starts going, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, come on, dude. And my legs start coming back. And right before that 15-mile, right before it's a 5-mile loop course, I went to the bathroom in the porta john that they had there, and I'm just having my head up against the thing, just relieving myself. And I'm like, I hope me taking this 45 seconds to pee makes them shut up about the record because they kept talking about the record. I'm like, I hope they just shut up about it. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, my legs are dead. And my legs came back to life. And we got through, and there's 10 miles left. And my brother jumps in with me and a couple other buddies with me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can do it. Clicking off the miles, banking some time. And going to the last lap, I think I needed to run it in under, I think it was like 44 minutes. And I'm like, wow, this is actually going to happen. It was like a victory lap. And it was just an absolutely awesome feeling. In that race, they have anywhere from a 50K up to 24-hour race. And there's a bunch of people that camp out, and there's probably, I don't know, at least 100 people at the finish line. And they like announced that I was like on pace for the record and stuff. And it was an absolutely awesome feeling. This one was awesome too, because the finish line was very sweet. And I appreciate them all. I don't like to really compare them to each other. And being the top 20 in the US or whatever, that looks so great on paper, but it's like so kind of inaccurate because it really doesn't show, because none of the elites run flat courses or anything like that. So it's not like I'm a top 20 100 miler in the US. Technically, I was on paper for that year because I ran a flat course, and Jim Walmsley and all the good runners aren't running any of those flat courses. I'm super proud of it, but it's just when people see that, they think it's more than what it really is.
Well, I mean, I think anytime that a person runs under 24 hours for a 100 mile, that's just like a huge accomplishment in of itself. Because, like I said, and you said, so many things can go wrong. Just like one little thing can derail you. That 24 hours, I think, is like the benchmark for, I would say like almost elite status. I, I don't know. It's kind of one of those, like you said, weird things because there's really no separation between, say, like a Western states, Eastern states versus like a rail trail 100, because they're sort of
Yeah,
all, yeah, they're all just together.
yeah, you can't really. Yeah, it's hard to compare them, and what something is on one course is completely different than what it is on another course. It's comparing apples to oranges. But I mean, in my opinion, anyone who runs 100 miles in any amount of time is absolutely incredible. It's insane what the human body can do. And the people who run it in 36 hours, like that just mentally exhausts me. I was falling asleep and like about to vomit after this race. I couldn't imagine being out there for another 18 hours. Like just being able to mentally stay focused for 36 hours or 33 hours, that's just insane in general. And even people who do a 50K or even people who do a marathon, like that's still such an accomplishment that everyone should be so proud of. Comparison, they always say, is a thief of joy. So whenever you compare yourself to others, like it makes it seem like your accomplishment isn't anything, which it really is. You got to compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Growing up, I was 230 pounds when I was a senior in high school. I wasn't athletic at all. I never saw myself as an athlete. And I got into running like my freshman year of high school or my freshman year of college, and I'm doing all this now. But like, if I compare myself to Elliot Kipchoge or Jim Walmsley, like I'm absolutely nothing now. But if I compare myself to who I used to be, then I'm absolutely amazing compared to that. So it's really a mental game not to compare yourself to people, but you really got to see how far you've come.
That's actually a really good perspective to have, and for people to actually like take in and think about. But just, I can't wrap my head around, not to compare people, but just like what happened that 6 day race the other week. Uh,
You have to tell me about that.
uh, I forget that woman. It wasn't Courtney. It was
Camille?
Camille. Yeah, she did that 6 day race that where she broke like all kinds of records. I don't want to get into the details what she sort of leaked what was happening to her, but just to be like mentally and have those physical issues going on, it was amazing to see and read.
That, yeah, that's wild. 6 days. Holy crap. That
Yeah,
just it cost me just thinking about that. Like, whew.
yeah, I would definitely read about that and see some of the issues that she had, and because she made them public, but she didn't go into too much detail, but it makes perfect sense. That way, just another thing to think about, like, and to prepare for maybe if you ever decide to do something like a 48 or last man standing.
Yeah, those are absolutely wild. Like what she does, what Courtney does, what Harvey Lewis does. Just those last man standings are absolutely insane, and that doesn't turn my crank currently wanting to do that. I'm better when I don't sit down. I don't know how people sit down, then get back up, and sit down and get back up. That just hurts my muscles thinking about. So I'll stick to these things. But eventually, Moab 240. That's something that it's kind of on the bucket list. So maybe in like 5 or so years, I'll dabble in something like that. But
So what's next up for you? Do you have any like big plans the rest of the year that you could actually let people in on or set your sights
uh,
on?
yeah, I definitely want to do Burning River 100. I got second in that last year. Some absolute beast from New Jersey just randomly jumped into the race and completely killed me by like an hour. So I'd like to win that race. That's on my bucket list to win, whether it's this year, whether it takes me 5 years to do it. I want to go out and put on a good performance there and win that. Um, a lot of things have kind of happened recently, and this is kind of I'm looking at like a new chapter in my life after this race. Like I was all excited for it. I was anxious for it for a lot of reasons, and I'm about to turn 27 here next month, and I'm like, okay, I had a really good 26 year. So what can we do 27? So I definitely want to correct. I have a lot of corrections of errors I want to do. It went great, but hey, I can do things better. So this next week when I'm on PTO, I'm definitely going to reset some of my goals going forward and really think about what do I want. Uh, and I think it's important. I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan, and he says you have to stumble towards the light. He said you're always going to have these different goals, but that goal is going to change over time. And the important thing is to always be progressing, whether that goal changes. As long as you're progressing, you're going to be closer to what that next goal is. So just resetting those goals, I think, is important, and that's kind of what I'm going to do. Definitely, like I said, Burning River is going to be one of those things. I'm going to run the New River Gorge summer version that Wolf Creek Race Management is hosting. And other than that, I'm sure I'm going to find some other races to jump into. Definitely going to pay my buddies back some favors for pacing me. I know Dustin and Andy are both running Laurel, so I'll definitely be pacing one of them there. And I'll definitely pace some other people for some races, I'm sure.
Well, I'll be at Laurel. Hopefully I don't see you because hopefully like we're all doing good and then we're just like blowing by, but you know how that
Yeah,
goes.
yeah, absolutely. I'm sure I'll probably be at some of the earlier on aid stations as well, just helping out crewing before I pick one of my buddies up at like 46, I think. Where you hop in at
Uh, sounds
48.
about yeah. I forget what route like 31 is or 30. I always get them confused because since I live so close, I always get route 30 and 31 confused when it comes to the aid stations, like where you can pick the people up at. It has to be the last two, so it has to be route 30. So it would be like 46.
Yeah, I think so because I think I ran 24 with him last year, so that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that seems right. All right. I think that's about it for the questions I had. Do you have anything else you want to add or?
No, I don't think so. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it was fun. It was I like I said, is I never done it. Well, they switched venues this year, but it's just one of those informative things. I think it's just to get your perspective how it went because of the impressive performance, and it gives some insight to maybe how people want to tackle it next year if they want to compete with you, I guess is the word. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great setup course. I think it's any of those loop races are good for your first 100 miler as well. Definitely getting your crew there and just getting down a pattern. I think is easier than just running a point to point race. And honestly, I'm biased since I said they're my sponsor. It was one of the most exciting, best setup events I've ever seen. They went like all out with the expo, their banners and stuff. Whenever people were coming in, they were announcing them. They had a DJ the whole time. Just that setup where the start finish is was just so much energy. There's hundreds of people there the whole time cheering you through whenever you went through the little auditorium thing there. So definitely would highly suggest it to anyone going forward. And hopefully the weather's this good next year.
yeah, let's hope we get as lucky. I mean,
Yeah.
I will take this winner over 90% of winners.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. I thought this winter was going to be absolutely terrible with snow, at least where I'm at in Ohio. Like the last two winters before this weren't bad as snow at all. So I thought we were going to get absolutely drowned, but we did not. So
Yeah, definitely got lucky. So, all right. Well, thank you for coming on, and I'm sure I'll see you and talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good one.
You too.